the paths of wealth creation, blockchain technology, CRISPR technology, computer vision, and space exploration. Those are the four paths of wealth creation that we at Orange Capital Partners are working on. Some of them we have invested against, others we haven't yet. This is the Not Even Wrong podcast. It's April 3rd, 2021. This is Krim Delko. Today is a Saturday. There's no update. So since the last update, we're still roughly down 4% for the year. The market's up roughly 6%. We're underperforming by 10%. Today is one of those episodes, I call them the deep dive, the calibration episodes, which means we want to understand why is it we're doing what we're doing? Where do we stand? Are we correct? Are we on our path of wealth creation the way we should be? And are we maybe, hopefully we're not off the path. The reason this is important is because it is paramount in a world that is so complex and so complicated. You get all the time, the chances of taking a wrong path. So let me rephrase that. So we believe that life, like everything else, is a bunch of decisions that we take all the time in terms of should we do this or that? What's next? What should we do? Should we do this or that? So life, like everything else, this is now a little bit off the topic, but we believe that even science is like that. Everything, the fundamental nature of reality is basically a constant computation, a constant branching of should I go here or should I go there? This branching applies to everything, physics, and of course also hedge fund managers. The purpose of this podcast is to give people a sense for what it feels like to run a hedge fund. Running a hedge fund is first and foremost the art of navigating through a very messy reality. And the way we think you should do that, the best way to do that, in our opinion, is to have a North Star. The North Star is a set of principles that are underlying our actions. And this is important because you will always be exposed to the messiness of reality. So you have to always make sure every now and then you have to stand up or pause and just reflect, am I on the right path? Is this what I want to do? Maybe I got distracted. Maybe I took a wrong turn a while back in one of the branches, and now I'm at a point where I don't want to be. So this is very important. So let's talk about the four paths of wealth creation that we think are important. And before we go there, let's remind ourselves the purpose of Orange Capital Partners is to generate wealth by investing in fundamentally new concepts and engineering practices with large impact. So the purpose is to generate wealth. We're in the wealth making business. We're not interested in popularity, not interested in tweets, likes, invitations to TV shows. We're not interested in raising capital just for the sake of raising capital and collecting fees. The reason I'm mentioning all these things is because some other people are interested in that, and that is a very legitimate business. We just are not like that. We're interested in growing the assets under management through returns, or in other words, generating wealth. So the purpose is to generate wealth. The way we do it is we invest in fundamentally new concepts and engineering practices. And this is the episode of today. Wants to talk about what are those fundamentally new concepts and engineering practices that we're seeing. What is it actually out there that we see as an opportunity to generate wealth? And there's four of them. Again, blockchain technology, CRISPR technology, computer vision, and space exploration. Those are fundamentally new concepts or areas in which there are fundamentally new concepts and engineering practices to be applied. I want to go through each of them and then explain why we are invested in what we're invested, or in some of them we're not invested, and also explain why we're not invested and what the goals are in terms of what we want to do. So let's start with computer vision. I think this is the most important fundamentally new concept and engineering practice in the field of computer vision that we've been invested in now for years. We've invested in Tesla. Tesla, in our opinion, is, of course, even much bigger than just computer vision. Tesla is in the business of decarbonizing the energy infrastructure. And in order to do that, they are using, amongst other things, electric cars, intelligent electric cars. And in order to make them intelligent, they have to teach them how to see. And this is where computer vision comes in. Now, this is a bit of a long-winded explanation to say that the main driver of Tesla going forward is going to be AI. And I think many of you probably have heard that before. This is not revolutionary. People, particularly now with the high valuation of Tesla, are talking about this. This is nothing new, but that's fine. This is we don't expect to be the only ones in the world to discover something. It's much more important that we still know why we're invested in Tesla and what the underlying dynamics are. The underlying dynamics of Tesla are first and foremost that they are using computer vision to teach the cars how to drive themselves in order to realize full autonomy in cars. Therefore, we believe Tesla in the long run is going to become an entertainment company and a payment company. I'm going to talk about the payment stuff a little bit later, but why is Tesla an entertainment company? Because we won't drive our own cars anymore, and therefore it will become much more paramount that you have comfortable seats, that you have something to do in terms of watching, either through productivity or through entertainment, playing video games, things like that will be much more important for car companies, not just for traditional entertainment companies. And it is very conceivable that Tesla will move into that business. So what is computer vision? Computer vision is the application of technology, of statistical technology, to teach digital processors how to make sense of their environment by analyzing data in a specific way that allows them to make sense of shapes and forms and three-dimensional objects. And the next level of application, of course, is to teach those robots that are able to see how to move around in reality. We go way back. This is a paper that I first came across through Fei-Fei Li, the professor at Stanford, which was, amongst others, also the mentor of Andrej Karpathy, the current head of AI at Tesla. So Fei-Fei Li spoke about this. This is from a book called In the Blink of an Eye. Long story short, the book talks about the Cambrian age when living organisms learned how to see, and that created this enormous proliferation and competition and specialization amongst living organisms because they could see, they could specialize, and the same thing could now happen with robots. And the first robot that is, in our view, going to be able to see and operate as an intelligent system is going to be the Tesla car. So the application of computer vision to reality is going to instantiate itself through the Tesla car, and we are invested in Tesla. The repercussions of that are huge. We will see massive changes in business models. For example, things like I said, Tesla could turn into an entertainment company. We will see a lot more driving, a lot more efficient driving, a lot less use of space, a lot more efficient transportation. The repercussions are massive. And don't forget, we have seen that concept before where, for example, trucking and the highway system created the suburbs of the United States. They created Walmart. They created lots of things. Lifestyles changed because transportation changed. The same will happen here. And like I said, this is a path to wealth generation. Tesla is our instantiation through investing. There will be other opportunities. Fortunately, Tesla in itself is an incubator for startups and applications of these types of technologies. So we are already exposed in a very big scale. The next path to wealth generation is CRISPR technology. CRISPR technology, in a nutshell, is the application of an invention by Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuel Charpentier, and that is the ability to precisely edit genomes. Then later on, George Church and David Liu and others and Fang Zhang evolved into using that in mammals. Then we had base editing, which is a sort of CRISPR 2.0. The ability to precisely edit genomes, change genomic consistency, or edit the genome. So cut and paste, change A's into T's and G's and things like that. What that enables is a digitization of life science. Because not just that you can now edit the genome, you can also study the genome by changing it and see how these changes affect its potential. In a nutshell, we believe that the fundamental doctrine of biology, which is DNA, RNA, protein, it might not be fully true. I think there's enough research now to say that that's probably a too simplified way to look at it. But I think for our purposes, it's still good enough. We have DNA, RNA, protein. So we go from the code, DNA, to the actual effective application or the work which is done, let's say, in a body through the protein. So we have the genomic side through CRISPR covered. We also now have with AlphaFold a way to predict how proteins will fold given its amino acid sequence, which is basically the next level from the genome. So we have the DNA creates RNA, which then create amino acids, and then they fold. So we can predict the folding, and therefore we can go one way. We can design proteins by coding them into DNA, and then also go the other way around. We can learn from the workings of how proteins actually work. We can get back to how they fold and then get down to how the coding is in the DNA. So we can go this way and that way. We can design proteins and also learn from how they actually interact within the living organism to see how, let's say, certain changes in the DNA might change the folding and therefore their function. So we have the beginnings here of a digitization of life science. We have a portfolio of 7 companies that we're invested in that cover this space. Some of them are pure therapeutical CRISPR companies, such as CRISPR Therapeutics and Intellia and Editas. We have Beam Therapeutics, which is using base editing to solve certain therapeutic problems. We also have invested in Twist Bioscience, which is in the synthetic biospace and therefore is trying to tackle certain therapeutic problems, but also just sell synthetic DNA to companies that could use certain applications of synthetic DNA, for example, in the food business or in the pharmaceutical business. The Twist Bioscience is also active, let's say, in using DNA as storage, so they could then become an application for long-term storage. So this company is a little bit detached from the therapeutic side of things, but fits very well into our theme of digitizing life sciences. We have invested in Pacific Bioscience, a very important company, because Pacific Bioscience, on the one hand, is in the genomic sequencing space, very important. Nothing is going to happen with CRISPR companies if they don't know how to read the genome, and Pacific Bioscience is particularly strong in long reads and has also been able to increase their accuracy and lower their costs, which makes them a disruptive company within the genomic sequencing space. Finally, we're also invested in Fate Therapeutics. It's a company that uses cell therapy. In a nutshell, what they're doing is they're using generic cells, off-the-shelf cells, then program them into, let's say, anti-cancer cells and other kind of T cells that could be helping patients to fight diseases. So those are the companies that we have invested in. There's more opportunities in that space. We're monitoring very carefully, and we're particularly interested in further applications of CRISPR technology. So like we invested in Beam as sort of CRISPR 2.0, there's already even more technologies out there that are even more specific and are using maybe not CRISPR 3.0, but even better modifications of traditional CRISPR technology. To some extent, that's also being done by the traditional CRISPR companies, so we're okay with that. So the third path to wealth generation is blockchain technology. This is a space where we have no direct investments. The only indirect investment we have is to Tesla. Tesla has bought a lot of Bitcoin onto their balance sheet, but we also believe that Tesla will morph into a better application for blockchain technology with time. But let's get a little bit more basic here. This is a field that we are very, very excited about because we believe that blockchain technology is going to enable two things that the internet has not been able to solve, which is identity and trust. Or an application of trust would be value. So people talk about the internet of value. Fundamentally, what blockchain technology can do is replace a lot of our legal system, replace a lot of our centralized institutions, such as financial markets, such as even political institutions, decision-making executive branches, because the blockchain technology is a decentralized consensus system where everybody can see what's been done. There is no lying. The history is always available to everybody. And we can, through the use of smart contracts on blockchains such as Ethereum and the applications of those smart contracts enable, like I said, almost like a new type of legal system. So what this means for us is we believe that this is a little bit like when the sort of the Renaissance Italian city-states like Florence and Venice started to flourish because they started using, let's say, new accounting systems, new laws, new applications of laws, things like that, in order to generate new types of commerce, which made them very, of course, wealthy and also influential in the arts. So the Renaissance was really the beginning of the Enlightenment in Europe, and it was driven by new innovations in legal systems such as contract law, such as also human rights law, things like that, basic stuff that we take for granted today. Back then, of course, were much more, how should I say, they were much more novel. And I think also, if you want a Popperian view of this, Popper famously saying that democracy is the system where we replace leaders with better leaders without violence, or you can extrapolate that in a more general way. Any kind of Popperian system replaces existing institutions with better institutions without violence, and the blockchain technology is an underlying infrastructure that allows that to happen in an algorithmic way, and therefore has enormous potential. We are not invested yet because also some of the companies that are in the space are not public yet, and to some extent also some of the problems that need to be solved right now are in particular scalability and cost. It is very expensive, for example, to transact in decentralized financial markets. The benefits are not clear yet, but they will become clear, in particular if, for example, the necessity to move money around without government intervention becomes bigger and things like that. But as of now, we're not invested other than through an indirect investment in Tesla. However, we believe that blockchain technology as a fundamental infrastructure to solve trust and identity in a decentralized way is absolutely fundamental. The fourth path to wealth generation is space exploration, and in particular, SpaceX. SpaceX is disrupting the satellite launch market. This is the first step, and therefore it will become a lot cheaper and a lot more prolific to launch satellites in space. This is the first step of space exploration. And I want to make it clear, for us, space exploration has two sides. One is space, the other is the Earth. So by enabling a faster exploration of space, in particular through the launch of satellites, we are also changing a lot of technologies on Earth. What I mean with that is, for example, if it becomes a lot cheaper to launch satellites to create something like Starlink, which is an internet based on many satellites, a mesh network of satellites in space, then also the internet business on Earth will change. For example, people have a lot more rural access to the internet. That will allow a lot more applications, for example, in rural areas such as John Deere. We mentioned that in previous episode, John Deere could be a huge beneficiary of that. And that's why we believe that Katie Wood's Space Exploration Fund is actually an interesting fund, because she invested mainly in companies that will benefit on the terrestrial side of things through space exploration. So again, there's two sides to space exploration. One is space, so you can invest in companies like SpaceX. You can invest in companies that are, let's say, building new novel propulsion technologies for satellites. You can invest in companies that create better ways to launch satellites. You can invest in companies that actually build satellites. You can also invest in companies that are in the design space. Tomorrow we're having, on Monday, a conversation with a lady that works in the sort of architecture of space, design space, things like that. So we'll learn about opportunities in that area, or what are people thinking. So there's the space side of things, and there's also the terrestrial side of things where we can invest, let's say in John Deere, because John Deere will have better access, their technology, their robots will have more access to internet functionality because of things like Starlink. You can invest in entertainment companies even like Disney, but more interestingly maybe like Nvidia, which is in the gaming space, because people will have the ability to play video games in cars that drive through areas that previously were not covered very well with the internet. So to summarize, the four pillars of wealth creation: computer vision, blockchain technology, CRISPR technology, and space exploration. We are invested in some of them. In the others we're still working on. Fundamentally, though, these are the four paths on which we want to take ourselves, on which we want to invest, participate, learn, evolve, educate ourselves, learn the people, learn. These are the spaces we want to be exposed to, because we believe that 10, 20 years from now, those will be the pillars of wealth generation for this particular period of time. Thank you.